here in the situation room of the Reconstruction Division, or the Construction Implementation Unit in the Ministry of Economy. And as you can see that this situation room has a detailed breakdown of all the areas in Fiji. As you know, the cyclone Winston came through here and damaged one of Malawi, went across Koro, and then essentially had a swipe at the northwest part of Vitilevu. Of course, there were some areas here up in the north that were damaged. This sets out in a very detailed format the different buildings that were damaged, and in particular the schools, including the agricultural stations and various other public buildings that were damaged in the wake of Cyclone Winston. There has been a lot of misinformation and speculation, in particular by Fiji Times, in respect of the construction of schools. And as you know, that the government, as highlighted by the Honourable Prime Minister, is very keen on ensuring that the rebuild is not just simply some kind of patchwork. We need to build back better. And that has something that we have said right from the beginning needs to happen. And so we are going through various phases. As you know, that for the first time we had involved the Fiji Institution of Engineers that carried out very detailed assessments. Those of you who've been to the Adopted Schools Program website, you will see all the schools that have been damaged. You see the assessments. You will see the costs that have been associated with it. Based on that, of course, there was the initial assessment, and we have then had to build up documentation regarding that. So, for example, if you have this building here and the roof goes blown away, you simply don't just go and hammer in the roof. You need to understand what are the structures on the site. Can it handle the new weight? What sort of structural damages have taken place beneath the roof? Are the beams strong enough? A lot of these places you had actually, timber. And as you know, that many of the schools, in particular in the rural areas, you don't just simply have one or two buildings. So you could have a school sometimes having 7, 8, 10 buildings with different classrooms, and they're all individual buildings. So in some schools, for example, some buildings were blown away and others weren't. And one of the challenges, of course, has been when we build back, do we simply build back that same number of buildings, or do we collapse that into one and, for example, put a double-story concrete school building that may have 3 classes on top, 3 classes on the bottom, as opposed to having individual buildings for each classroom. And that's how it was been done. Previously, of course, community schools did not have enough money, so as they got more money, they kept on putting up one building at a time. So the idea is to now to build back better. That includes looking at concrete solutions. It looks at amalgamating the classrooms into one building. So it also can, of course, in the future serve as in most cases, evacuation centers too. Now, there has been detailed works that have been carried out. As we speak, the government tender board is looking at the first batch of schools that have been that were called for tender, and they're going to award the tender. We're looking at 9 schools that will be awarded in the first batch. You'll also see that some of these areas, for example, they are in they've been put into clusters. So these are the clusters that have been set up. In other words, you could have one contractor that could, we don't do one contractor for each building. You could have one contractor doing 3 or 4 schools because it's in the same area. It makes a lot more sense because the mobilization cost then becomes a lot lower, and then people are able to get synergies. They can move from one school to the other school using the same labor, so the speed increases. The reason why we have been through this phase is to ensure that we have proper documentation. We'll take you to the other room and we'll see the gentleman from the Construction Implementation Unit, the level of documentation that has developed and has been developed in order to ensure that we are building back better. So the schools that have actually been, which needs to be approved or will be approved by the government tender board as we speak. For example, in Ba we have Ba Sanatan College, Bata Lau Sanatan Dharam School, this is again in Ba, and Arya Kanya Pachala. Then you have the St. Francis College, Wunibikoloa Arya School, Double Muslim Primary School. Then you have Londoni Primary, and then of course part of that too we have Londoni Health Center, that is also being rebuilt. And then you have Namasau Methodist School, and you have Tataya Memorial School. These are the 10 buildings that are on the government tender board that is making a decision on that as to who to award the tender to this morning. Now, these will now come, in terms of the awards of the tenders, will come very, very quickly. And we are looking at by November for all the contracts to be awarded. Now, in the meantime, of course, as soon as the contracts are awarded today by the government tender board to whichever company is going to get it, they'll mobilize within a week, and they'll start the work on the ground. Now, so you have the next batch, and we are focusing obviously on schools that have been completely damaged. That's really our main priorities. But we need to ensure that it's built back better in a very constructive manner. So you will see on this situation room, it sets out exactly what schools in which area has been damaged, and also the nursing station. You have over here, for example, Tabuni, you have an agricultural station that has been damaged, you have Overlau, and all these various other parts. Now, for example, if you want to look at, say, the central division, and we then have a detailed analysis of those areas, more and more focal points. So you go to board 3. So we put out board 3 to central 1. So if you look over here, Nagun Nisea District School, Londoni Primary School, the tender, it's in the tender process at the moment. The others are in the detailed assessment phase. So this is a sort of detailed board where you have all the different schools, the different areas that have been affected, and how they'll be dealt with more specifically, and you have the breakdown here. Now the engineers, there are a panel of engineers who are actually carrying out the work. There's a number of engineering firms that have been involved. They've been given various clusters, and you can see the type of documentation. You know, it goes right down to the minute details in respect of each of that. You can see the designs, you can see the drawings of the school and the type of material that's required. All of that is within this documentation. And I'd like to also thank the Director Shah, or Manager of Construction Implementation Unit, Mr. Shah and his team. They've been working very, very hard, and I know some of them have been a bit aggrieved by the fact that there's some of the media organizations are spreading a lot of misinformation, just purely speculating in the media that nothing is being done, when they need to understand that there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes. And as I said, the emphasis is to make sure that we get it right. And we'll get it right, and the time frame we'll be able to meet in respect of the tenders been going out till November. Some schools, of course, will be completed before the beginning of the first term. Some schools may not be. But the fact is that they will be done in a proper manner. They will be done in a manner that can withstand, cyclones. Of course, the strength of the cyclones can, of course, have a damaging effect all over the place. But the fact is, we want to be able to put the best effort in, given the resources that we do have. So this is the type of documentation they go through, and they've been doing this, in fact, over the past few weeks. Thank you very much. Of course, the New Zealand government has said that they'll fix up the schools in Balawu. Australian government is looking at Koro. We understand they themselves are going through the documentation phase and the design phase, etc. And we'll start work soon, and we appreciate the assistance. ACAP, of course, is they have some other schools in other areas, and they're going to start on that too. So from our perspective, it has been very, very disturbing that certain media organizations, in particular Fiji Times, has been running a misinformation in respect of the construction of schools. There, of course, has been some confusion in respect of the information that may have come out from different quarters. But the fact of the matter is that we need to, and all of us need to be concerned, that we are able to build back the schools better and get a maximum return on the value of the dollar that we invest for the taxpayers of Fiji. We simply just don't go along and just put up a tin roof without it being secure, and some mild storm comes along and it can get damaged. The other thing that people need to also understand, that just because a roof may have been blown off a particular school building, it does not mean you simply is going to put up the tin or corrugated tin. You need to look at the structural damage that may have been caused further down from the roof, and that's why the documentation has been very important. A number of the schools did not have any blueprint. There's no architectural drawings for these schools. So we had to start from scratch. So in the future, God forbid, if some of the schools do get damaged after they've been built after another cyclone, at least we'll have a blueprint for those particular buildings, the new ones that we put up, and some of the ones that we'll be, partially constructing because of the partial damages that have taken place. So over here is the overall plan. The various divisions have been put into clusters, so you can see the various clusters that have been formed. It also helps in the awarding of contracts, so it's not like one contractor gets one school. In certain areas that may be the case, in other areas, because in a cluster they may get 4 or 5 schools in a particular area. That makes it a lot more cost effective, so the mobilization costs are a lot more efficient. You get proficiency in the mobilization costs, and they can move their laborers around. As you know, in Fiji there's already a shortage of laborers or skills people or tradespeople in respect of putting up construction sites. We've got other construction that's taking place. So this is the reason why we put in clusters. Obviously, you have the overall plan of what's happening, and you'll see the detailed breakdown. Over here, on your right over here, you see the different divisions, or there's more specific areas, more in details as to what are the actual schools or the public buildings that have been damaged, and what's the phase. Is it on tender process now? Is it the details been assessed? So, for example, over here, you have in Dakandrove province, you have, for example, Vuna District School has now gone on the tender process. So the others, the detailed assessments are being done, and they may in fact be in the next batch. So it gives you more breakdown. What we'll be doing now for the media going forward, we'll be giving you regular updates in the next, say, probably every 3 to 4 weeks as to what has happened in the tender process, at what stage they have reached. And it's important for you to do that. We obviously did not want to make any statements earlier on despite the misinformation has been spread, because we wanted to be in a position to be able to tell you exactly the story that's taking place behind the scenes. So over here you can see, for example, in Tabuni, the schools that have been damaged, in other areas in Dakandrove, you also have, for example, police stations, you have agricultural stations, you also have schools. All of this needs to be reconstructed. You have also quarters, government quarters in outer areas or rural areas that need to be fixed up too. This gives you more detailed breakdown of that. So this is the situation room for the construction and implementation unit, in particular for the rebuild effort after Cyclone Winston. As you know, that in excess of $130 million has been allocated for this particular area, in particular for grades 3, 4 and 5. Grades 1 and 2, the money has been allocated to the Ministry of Education. They're doing the assessments now. Some of these schools, of course, have some superficial damage, the grades 1 and 2. So maybe a ceiling needs to be replaced, or maybe the guttering or downpipe, etc., needs to be replaced. And they're more smaller works. And we look forward to receiving that and starting work on that very soon. But these are the more sort of substantive areas that we need to be able to deal with. For example, again, this is the work in Tailevu and Tailevu North, all the schools that have been damaged. Thank you.
Just a question, say, you mentioned that